Think about the last time you woke up and immediately reached for your phone. Within 60 seconds, you had already checked a notification, maybe scanned a headline, maybe felt a small spike of anxiety about something that hadn't even fully registered yet. By the time you got out of bed, your brain was already in reactive mode, chasing someone else's agenda, someone else's urgency. Now think about what the alternative looks like. Not a 2-hour wellness ritual, not cold plunges in journaling for 45 minutes, just 10 minutes, 10 intentional minutes before the noise gets in. That window, the first 10 minutes of your morning, is neurologically the most important window of your entire day. What you do with it doesn't just set your mood, it sets your brain's biochemical baseline for the next 16 hours. And most of us are wasting it without even knowing it. Here's what's actually happening in your brain during the first 20 to 30 minutes after you wake up. Your body initiates something called the cortisol awakening response, a natural, sharp surge in cortisol that peaks roughly 30 to 45 minutes after waking. Now, cortisol has a reputation problem. We associate it with stress, with burnout, with everything we're trying to avoid. But this morning surge is different. It's not a threat response. It's a preparation signal. Your brain is essentially priming itself, sharpening alertness, boosting working memory, raising your capacity for focused, high-level thinking. This is your brain handing you a gift every single morning, a natural window of heightened cognitive readiness. The question is whether you direct that energy towards something intentional or whether you let it get hijacked by the first dopamine trigger you encounter. Because if you reach for your phone, if you hand that primed, alert brain over to a feed of notifications and news, you don't just waste the window. You actively redirect it in a way that makes focused, deep work harder for the rest of the day. This is where the phone conversation becomes impossible to ignore. When you check your phone first thing in the morning, you're not just getting a little distracted. You're triggering a dopamine release, small but immediate, that shifts your brain into what researchers describe as a reactive attentional state. You become oriented toward novelty, toward the next thing, and the next thing after that. Your prefrontal cortex, the part of the brain responsible for sustained focus, planning, and deliberate decision-making, gets outcompeted by the limbic system's pull toward stimulation. Andrew Huberman, the Stanford neuroscientist who has spoken extensively on morning protocols, has emphasized the relationship between morning cortisol timing and the role of early light exposure in anchoring your circadian rhythm. The point isn't just about light, it's about the sequencing of your first inputs. What you expose yourself to first shapes the neurological frame through which you process everything that follows. A reactive first input produces a reactive day. A grounded, intentional first input produces a grounded, intentional day. The science isn't complicated, the practice is just inconvenient, which is exactly why most people don't do it. So what does the actual 10-minute routine look like? There are 3 components, and the time allocation is deliberate. The first 2 minutes are stillness and intentional breathing. That's it. You don't need a complex breathwork protocol. Sit upright, breathe slowly, and resist the urge to fill the silence. What this does neurologically is meaningful. Slow, controlled breathing activates the parasympathetic nervous system, which dampens amygdala reactivity and allows your prefrontal cortex to come fully online. You're not meditating for enlightenment. You're running a 2-minute system check before you engage with the world. If you want guidance here, the Headspace app has specific morning breathing sessions that are short, evidence-informed, and genuinely useful for people who find pure silence uncomfortable at first. 2 minutes, that's the commitment. The next 3 minutes are movement, and I want to be clear, this is not a workout, this is not a run. This is light stretching, gentle mobility, maybe a slow walk around your space. The reason this matters is biochemical. Even modest physical movement in the morning has been shown to elevate BDNF, brain-derived neurotrophic factor, which supports neural plasticity and cognitive function. It also raises dopamine baseline levels, not in the spiky, crash-prone way that a phone notification does, but in a sustained, regulated way that supports mood and motivation throughout the day. 3 minutes of movement is not about fitness, it's about neurochemistry. The final 5 minutes are for deliberate intention setting, and this is the component most people get wrong because they turn it into a to-do list. That's not what this is. The practice is simple. Write down one thing, one priority, the single most important outcome for today, stated in a complete sentence. Not a task list, not a brain dump, one sentence. There's research going back decades on implementation intentions. The cognitive act of writing a specific goal activates the prefrontal cortex in a way that vague mental planning simply doesn't. You're essentially giving your brain a directive before the day's noise has a chance to drown it out. A physical journal works beautifully here. There's something about the act of writing by hand that slows your thinking down and makes the intention feel real. If you've read Robin Sharma's The 5 a.m. Club, which is available on Audible, you'll recognize this kind of morning intention setting as central to his framework. If you prefer to work digitally, Notion is excellent for maintaining a simple daily intention log. One page, one line, every morning. What matters is the consistency of the practice, not the medium. Now here's where it gets interesting, because the real power of this routine isn't in any single morning. It's in what happens when you do it consistently over 30 days. Habit formation research, including the foundational work from Philippa Lally at University College London, suggests that behavioral automaticity begins to emerge around 66 days on average. But meaningful neurological change can begin much earlier. What you're doing with a consistent morning priming practice is gradually recalibrating your baseline. Your default attentional state shifts. Decisions that used to require effort start to feel more natural. Your tolerance for distraction decreases, not because you've suppressed anything, but because your brain has been repeatedly trained to begin the day in a focused, directed state rather than a reactive one. The concept here connects directly to neuroplasticity, the brain's capacity to reorganize itself based on repeated experience. Every morning you complete this routine, you're reinforcing the neural pathways associated with intentionality, with prefrontal engagement, with the ability to direct your own attention. And every morning you skip it and reach for your phone, you're reinforcing the opposite. The compound effect over weeks is measurable in focus quality, in mood stability, in the quality of decisions you make under pressure. Small inputs, repeated consistently, produce large outcomes. Before we talk about how to start, let's talk about what to actively avoid, because the 3 most common morning habits are working against your brain in ways that are worth naming clearly. The first is checking your phone within the first 30 minutes of waking. We've covered the neuroscience, but the practical point is this. Even if you tell yourself you're just checking the time, the pull to go further is almost impossible to resist. Keep the phone in another room until your routine is done. Not in your pocket, not face down on the nightstand. Another room. The second is skipping natural light exposure. Sunlight in the first hour of waking, even through a window on a cloudy day, plays a documented role in cortisol regulation and serotonin production. You don't need to stand outside for 20 minutes. Open the blinds. Step outside for 60 seconds. Give your brain the light signal it's been calibrated by evolution to receive. The third is skipping hydration. After 6 to 8 hours of sleep, your body is mildly dehydrated, and even mild dehydration impairs cognitive function measurably. A glass of water before anything else is not a wellness cliché. It's basic maintenance for the organ you're trying to optimize. These aren't difficult changes, but they require you to decide in advance that your morning belongs to you. Here's the real point underneath all of this. No one is telling you that you need a perfect morning. There is no perfect morning. What the research and the neuroscience And frankly, the lived experience of high performers across every field consistently points to is the difference between a morning that happens to you and a morning you happen deliberately. 10 minutes. That's the margin between reactive drift and intentional direction. So here's what I'm asking you to do. Try the 10-minute version for 7 days. 2 minutes of breathing, 3 minutes of movement, 5 minutes of writing one priority. That's it. No more, no less. And then come back to the comments and tell me what shifted. I read them. The specifics matter. What felt easy? What felt forced? What surprised you? If this kind of science-backed approach to performance and habit is useful to you, subscribe. There's more of this coming, and it builds on itself. The 10 minutes are already there. You're just deciding what to do with them.